All right, welcome everybody. It is Monday, and unless you are a Pittsburgh fan, I hope your team won yesterday. Uh, but unfortunately, Pittsburgh did win yesterday, so we're going to jump straight into some recaps from yesterday's NFL games. Right off the bat, we had the early game in Germany. I believe this is the last game that will be hosted in Germany this year. It was between the Patriots and the Colts. I had the Colts picked to win, and they did in fact win. It was a very low scoring game, final score of 10-6. Um, a lot of curious coaching decisions on New England's part, not going for a Hail Mary before half. They ended up benching Mac Jones yet again late in the fourth quarter after an interception. So there's a lot of issues there, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Bill Belichick uh, get terminated this week. So who knows what could happen there. Jumping into the regular timed games, the noon games, we had Green Bay on the road in Pittsburgh. I predicted Pittsburgh to win and also predicted them to outgain Green Bay, which would be the first game of the season. Pittsburgh outgains its opponents. That did not happen. Green Bay's offense didn't play terrible, I don't believe, but ultimately, I still have some issues with it. Jordan Love's completion percentage pretty low, barely over 50%. He completed 21 of 40. He did throw two interceptions, both on the final two drives that Green Bay had in the fourth quarter, trailing by 4 points. So it's one of those things where had he not turned the ball over on the first one, could have kicked a field goal and played defense, try to get the ball back and potentially kicked a field goal to win because we were in field goal range on both of those drives. The running game seemed a little bit better yesterday, although the majority of it came on a huge run, like a 40-yard run by A.J. Dillon. Outside of that, it was the running game really wasn't there. I mean, Aaron Jones had 13 carries for 35 yards. That's less than 3 yards per carry. Outside of the long run by A.J. Dillon, which was 40 yards, he had 8 carries for 30 yards. So less than 4 yards per carry there. And receiving wise, Jaden Reed had a good game. Luke Musgrave only had two catches, four targets, but 64 yards. Dontavian Wicks had three catches on four targets. Watson had two catches on seven targets. Him and Love have just not been on the same page, and he's supposed to be the explosive receiver, supposed to be the big playmaker, and they just can't get it going. Um, so it's just it's just frustrating. I mean, I feel like the play calling was a little bit better yesterday, but still, I don't. The offense got stagnant for long periods of time. I mean, we got an early touchdown, and then the rest of the first half, or I say that we punted, then we got another touchdown, and then we punted, ended the half with the ball, field goal to start the third quarter, punt, and then interception, interception. So we really didn't start too slow, I don't think. So I was kind of misspoken on that, but it just seems like the offense is still not getting a rhythm. And once they get going, or actually they sustain a drive, they just lose that momentum. So it's hard to um, it's hard to be disappointed with the way the offense played yesterday, outside of the two interceptions. But at the same time, like you get two touchdowns in the first half, and then all you can do is get, two field goals in the second half. Like, you know, that's not going to cut it. Like, you got to be able to score some points. And this offense does have times in games where it gets cold or it just doesn't do anything. And I don't know if it's just young players because, Jordan Love's a fourth year quarterback, but he's first year starter. You've got nothing but first and second year pass catchers outside of the offensive line and the two running backs. Everyone on the team is just on offense is extremely inexperienced. So I think that's part of it. And obviously, I think some of it is coaching. I think the coaching could be better. I really think they're missing Aaron Rodgers' experience and expertise and his knowledge in meetings and in game preparation. I think having a voice like his in the building would make things significantly better for the offense, but that is currently not working out. Defensively, the pass defense played pretty good. Um, I mean, really, in all actuality, the pass defense was really good, but that was because they tore us up on the ground. And I say that because Kenny Pickett was 14 of 23 for 126 yards, very low amount. But in the run game, Jalen Warren had 15 carries for 101 yards. That's 6.7 yards per carry. He also had a touchdown. Najee Harris had 16 carries for 82 yards. That's 5.1 yards per carry. Kenny Pickett had 4 carries for 16 yards, 4 yards carry. And then Calvin Austin III had 1 carry for 6 yards, giving up a total of 205 yards on the ground, which again, I've said the run defense is our biggest weakness, and Joe Barry and his scheme does not account for the run very well. Um, the one game we've played the run really well, I think, was Minnesota, and it's because they have no running backs, but we still lost that game. And I've seen a stat out there where Green Bay is averaging like 20 points, 19, 20 points against them per game. And I mean, that's a really low amount. Like, it's hard to be disappointed with that. But when you lose the games the way we're losing them, and you look at the fact that we have one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, it's very easy to not be happy with that. So Green Bay still got some things to figure out, and they really don't have a a schedule that allows them very many games to figure it out. I mean, Green Bay's schedule going forward is um, the Chargers next week. They have a terrible defense, so the offense theoretically should get going next week, but they also have a good offense. Follow that up with the Lions on Thanksgiving, the Chiefs after that, the Giants, easiest game of our schedule the remainder of the year, Tampa Bay, Carolina. So we got three manageable games right there, and then we finish with the Vikings and Bears again. So sitting at 3-6, I really don't see us getting to 8 wins this season. I'd be surprised if we got 8 wins or more. Anyway, continuing Sunday games, we had the Texans on the road against the Bengals. This was a really good game. I watched the majority of it, and CJ Stroud and the Texans shown that they have some fight in them, and that they're not just going to wash this season, give it up as a rebuild. Like they're showing that even though they are rebuilding and they are establishing a culture, they are still a good team, and they're here. And I think they're proving that. Their young players are playing extremely well. Their first year head coach is coaching extremely well, and I I'd said in my video yesterday that CJ Stroud, after last week's performance, put himself squarely in control of Offensive Rookie of the Year, and with his performance yesterday, I think he's elevating himself into the MVP conversation, and that's very lofty for a rookie, but his numbers have been very, very good. I mean, I think he's only thrown 2 interceptions on the year as a rookie, which is wild. Give me a second, I'll pull up his season stats right now. On the season, he's got 2,600 yards, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's 10th in the league in QBR, which is 63.2. His rating on the season is a 101. So he's had a very good season. He's played 9 games, so he's had his bye. I think most of the buys will be wrapping up this week, next week, or within the next couple weeks for sure. And that's when everybody will be back on the point that they've played the same amount of games. Because, like, if you look at stats right now, you'll see some players have played 9 games, some played 10. So you still have that getting lined out, but CJ Stroud's putting together a very good rookie season. And like I said, I think he is elevating himself into the MVP conversation right now. Next, we had the Saints on the road in Minnesota. Minnesota, now the hottest team in the league, won 5 straight, longest streak. That was Jacksonville had a 5 game streak until yesterday. Um, Josh Dobbs played really well yesterday. Derek Carr got hurt. I believe it had a concussion. I believe, and Jameis Winston came in, made some very good plays, but he also made some very Jameis Winston plays through 2 interceptions. And the Vikings were able to pull out a 27-19 win. Uh, I'm sure I covered Houston. Houston ended up beating Cincinnati. Cincinnati tied the game late with field goal, and then C.J. Stroud marched Houston down the field to get in field goal range, and they managed to kick a field goal to win 30-27. Um, Next, I thought the Titans would play well against the Buccaneers after what Houston did to them last week, and Will Levis looking pretty good in his first 2 games. Not so much the case yesterday. Buccaneers pulled out a big win. They needed that to get to 4-5. It was a 20-6 win, and Will Levis did not play terrible. He completed, 50% of his passes, 200 yards, and an interception. So, I mean, for a rookie in his third start, that's not bad, but you don't want to see that kind of performance for your offense a week after seeing CJ Stroud light this same Tampa Bay team up for 470 and 4 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns. So I thought Tennessee would play better, but they did not. Tampa Bay pulls that win out, keeping them in contention for the NFC South. Really, half game behind New Orleans because New Orleans hadn't had a bye. Next, we have the 49ers on the road against Jacksonville. 49ers coming out of a bye, and before the bye, they were on a 3 game losing streak. They come in and thoroughly dominated Jacksonville, winning 34-3. Jacksonville had been really hot, playing good on both sides of the ball, and they were nowhere to be found yesterday. So 49ers, pretty much everyone scored except Christian McCaffrey, who ended his 17-game streak with a touchdown. 18 would have tied the longest, including playoffs, so he missed out on that by a game. But 49ers looked great. They looked like they were the team that went 5-0 or 6-0. Yeah, 6-0. And no, they were 5-0 and then lost 3. So they look like they are that same team that manhandled Dallas. They looked really good. Chase Young looked good in his first action, so we'll keep an eye on them. Next, I had the Ravens picked to beat the Browns, and the Browns had a terrible start. Very first play of the game, Deshaun Watson throws a pick six, and it looks like it's all over. Um, and going into the fourth quarter, Baltimore had a 14-point lead, I believe, and they ended up. There's a pick six that got Cleveland back in it. They ended up getting a touchdown, missed an extra point, so they were down by a point, 31-30, but managed to get in field goal range late and kick a field goal as time expired to win 33-31 on the road in Baltimore. That is a big game for them in the division, and that is now Baltimore's third loss. So far, if you're keeping track, I got the Texans game wrong because I picked the Bengals. I got the Titans game wrong because I picked the Titans, and I picked the Ravens, and they were wrong. Other than that, I won all my picks yesterday. I had the Cardinals picked to beat the Falcons. That was a very close game. It come down to the Cardinals scoring a go-ahead touchdown very late in the game, hanging on to that. Um, Atlanta was in position to I thought they were in position to really seal it up, and then they just kind of they ended up just failing to do so late in the game. But um, and this was Kyler Murray's first action of the year. He come back. He didn't. I don't think he threw a touchdown. Um, he did throw an interception. I think he ran it. He did run a touchdown in, but um, understandable that he has some rust because he hadn't played since he tore his ACL last year. So good to see him back on the field and seeing Arizona looking productive. I had the Lions picked to beat the Chargers. Chargers have a terrible defense. Lions have a strong offense, and it turns out this game was just no defense, period, because uh, it was by far the highest scoring game of the week. We had almost 80 points total scored in this game. Detroit ends up going for it on 4th and 2 late in the game in field goal range to control the clock all the way down to 2 seconds, called a timeout, and kicked a game winning field goal to win 41-38 over the Chargers. Detroit now sitting at 7-2 with the second best record in the NFC. I'm not sure that's something a lot of people predicted before the season started, but Detroit is really firing on all cylinders. And with their schedule coming up, they play the Bears next week, winnable game. The Packers on Thanksgiving, winnable game. The Saints are a winnable game. The Bears, winnable game. The Broncos, winnable game. And then they finish the season with the Vikings on Christmas Eve, Dallas on um, the day before New Year's Eve, and then the Vikings again. So Detroit could be in a prime position for the 2 seed and even the 1 seed if Philly drops another game or two. If Philly drops a couple games and Detroit goes on a run, you're looking at a potential 1 seed for the Lions. That's I think they have their work cut out for them to get that, but it's a very very possible scenario. Next, we had the Giants on the road in Dallas playing the Cowboys. This was a 17.5 point spread, one of the biggest I've ever seen, and Dallas definitely covered. The Giants are just so depleted, playing a third string rookie quarterback, playing a lot of backups on defense, a lot of injuries for the Giants, and nobody really expected them to be competitive in this game, and they shown that they weren't. Um, Brandon Cooks had his best game of the year by far, getting. Uh, I think he actually led the team in yards. Let me pull it up and see real quick. Um, yes, he led the team with 173 receiving yards. Lamb was right behind him with 151. Gallup with 70. All three of them had a tutty. Um, I don't really take a whole lot away from this game on Dallas's part. They played very well against a very bad opponent, which they should. Um, and this is a scenario for Dallas that it sets them up for a big letdown coming up in the next few weeks because they just played the Giants, who are a terrible team. They're playing the Panthers this week, who are one of the worst, who's basically the worst team in the league. So that should be a huge rout. They play the Commanders on Thanksgiving. The Commanders can be somewhat feisty. They can be challenging, but they should be able to win that game. But then they have their 5 game stretch where I've talked about where they have a rough stretch. It's the Seahawks, it's the Eagles, it's the Bills, it's the Dolphins, and it's the Lions. I mean, that is a very rough 5 game stretch. So I think I think they need to take advantage of these next 2 games and keep getting Cooks and these other receivers involved, so you're not so heavily involved reliant on Lamb. And ultimately, you can't afford to slip up on these next 2 games because that 5 game stretch is rough. But at the same time, you've got to be realistic with yourself and know that hey, we just played 2 really bad teams and a Commanders team that's not that good, that just shipped out their two of their best defensive players at the trade deadline to look to the future. So these 3 games you definitely need to take advantage and win, but at the same time, don't buy into the fact like you don't buy into them like you did early in the season when you beat the Giants and the Jets and the Patriots so badly because the 49ers turned around and thumped you afterwards. Like, temper some expectations. Consider the fact that you were supposed to win that game against the Giants in that fashion, and the same with the Panthers and Commanders. And when you get to this 5 game stretch, go into it saying, I know these 5 games are going to be difficult. let's hope we can continue playing well like we did in these other games that were manageable, and let's hope we win as many as we can. Like, let's not go into it thinking, oh, we're the better team in every one of these games. We almost beat the Eagles in Philly. Now we got them in Dallas. We're going to roll through them, you know, and we're playing better now. And then you get thumped in one of these games because you're overconfident and you're buying into some of these bad teams that you just manhandled. And then you're playing good teams that you can't manhandle. So, I'd like to see Dallas temper their expectations just a little bit, keep the chatter down, and just put your head down and keep working. That's what I'd like to see. I had the Seahawks picked to beat the Commanders. Uh, it was a pretty close game. Commanders jumped out into an early lead. It was tied at halftime, and then Seattle got a lead in the third, and then Seattle held on and ended up winning 29-26. The last night's game, it was really a bad game. Wasn't really that good of a game to watch. The Jets shot themselves in the foot so many times with penalties. I know they wiped at least one touchdown off the board with penalties, and that could have been the difference in the game. Um, could have could have essentially made the game tied, and then being that they were in scoring position late in the game, they had opportunities for field goals that could have won the game. Um, but Antonio Pierce got his second win as interim head coach. The Raiders are playing really hard. They're playing good defense. Um, they still have some issues on offense to work out, but when you've got a rookie quarterback making his second start, that's expected. But the Raiders pulled out the win, and it was a good win, and they elevated their season, got back to 500 at 5-5, and that leaves us only with the Broncos on the road in Buffalo tonight for Monday Night Football. I have Buffalo picked to win after the letdown of losing to Cincinnati last week. Broncos coming out of a bye at 3-5. They should be ready for this game, but I think Buffalo's the better team, and I think Buffalo will win. So we will see how that goes, and we will hopefully be on here later in the week before Thursday Night Football making a video and um, talking about the next week. I know next week I will be out of town for Thanksgiving, so I'll probably make a video Tuesday for the Thanksgiving games, and then I'll try to be back in town to get a video for the Sunday games. So, but we'll figure that out when we get there, and hope we enjoy some Monday Night Football tonight.